Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and a little bit of a rant for you guys today because this is sort of coming off a specific article that I wrote, which it's an editorial that will hopefully appear on Tech Raptor. I mean, it needs to go through the editing process, and maybe it's not as good as I think it is, but in regard to Batman Arkham Knight. Now, before I begin the rest of this video, I want to give up a spoiler warning. If you don't want any of the content within Batman Arkham Knight to be spoiled for you, then I would stop this video right now, because I will be spoiling events of the game that are key to the discussion that I want to have. But if you don't care, then continue on, because this is a topic I need to talk about. Because I think in the whole, it is really hurting the gaming community in terms of issues that can be discussed in games. Now, let's preface this by saying I like where the industry has gone. The industry has gone to a place where we can discuss issues that old games may not have even touched. Gender equality issues, wealth issues, social status issues, things like that. This particular article, though, really sort of grinded my gears in terms of what the conclusion about it was. In Batman Arkham Knight, one of the main characters is the Oracle, Barbara Gordon. Barbara, in this series, has been crippled. She was shot in the back, and she is now wheelchair-bound. It is a very distinct plot line within the Batman games. And Oracle ends up being the information, sort of hub for the series. She is the planner. She is the thinker. Now, in the game's events, this Scarecrow, the fear toxin, everything that's happening to Batman, it is assumed that Barbara kills herself in a scene. You see her take a gun to her head and, pull the trigger. Now, spoiler, that doesn't actually happen. That is actually what's happening while Batman's affected by the fear toxin. But the article in question talked about, knowing that they hadn't finished the game, talked about how that hurt her as a character. That it made her weak, and it made her, undo all the good she's done for, handicap or disabled people. And it's stuff like that that really bothers me, because it's a singular view of a character and only of one strength, that the character has to be a certain way and a certain mindset in order for them to be successful. In my mind, Barbara Gordon within the Batman Arkham Knight game is the strongest character in terms of willpower and in terms of character more than any other character, including Batman himself. She shows that even after a horrific accident, or I should not even say accident, horrific event that happened to her, that she has the character of strength to overcome it, and still, even though she has to adjust her life in terms of what has happened to her, that she has the strength to carry on with her mission of helping the city and helping those around her and being a good person to the rest of the people that she knows. The fact that she's crippled, it sucks. There's no question about it. And it's a defining moment in the series. It's a defining moment for Batman, too, because it's actually the first real weakness that he can show, because that was because of him. He got her involved. She is now crippled because of it. There were other events in the series that happened that has similarities to it. Now, the thing is, when introducing that sort of suicide plot to it, this certain writer looked at it from a perspective of that character and that character alone. And the problems with that aside, which I talked to you about in the article in question, I want to actually talk about the other side of this. Everything is not a gender issue. Everything is not a social issue. Everything is not a government issue, for example. There are ways that a writer goes about things to discover certain plot elements, to show off certain elements of the human persona or the human psyche that he wants to explore. In particular, In this case, what the writer in question for this game was showing was the idea of control and fear. Looking at Batman and looking what he had gone through, to have Barbara seemingly commit suicide in front of him was almost the breaking point for him. The fact of the matter is that in that one moment, he actually really thought that he was doing bad for the city and that he couldn't do it anymore after the aftermath of that. And you could see it. You could see it and you hear it in his voice, with the Joker sort of taunting him at that point to let go and just sort of let it go, let it sort of go out. It's obviously that there's a huge event on him. The idea of control, that things that you can do to sort of influence your future may not be entirely in your control. And that hit home to me, because that is an issue that I've been dealing with on a regular basis. The idea of that not everything is in my control. It's why I left my job. It's why I have issues with some of the stuff that goes on in a corporate landscape. The thing is, for that topic, that way they handled it really sort of put a different perspective on it and really felt home, made me, think about it a little bit more and actually sort of dig deep into the lore of, why does Batman do this and why does he keep on fighting? And it really hit home. And it's probably one of the reasons why I gave the game such a high rating, is the fact that I was able to identify with the protagonist so well and what he was going through, and in particular identify with Barbara's strength of character, that even though she had, passed on at that point, supposedly, that she was a difference maker and that she served a great purpose. I made the comparison to a zombie movie where you always have the sacrifice, the person who, for the greater good, takes one for the team. And I felt like Barbara was that. Not to say she wasn't a weak character. Not to say she's a weak character. Not at all. In fact, she was a strong character. Only the strongest of characters can make that sacrifice. But it comes back down to the issues of the female character, the issues of the disabled character. And what bothers me about this is that there's no room to discuss anything else. Is that you have to discuss this. That if it doesn't go for the mindset of the female character in terms of what the interpretation of that character is, that you've done something wrong. That there is no way that Barbara can be this character, and that plotline was horrible for the sake of all characters in video games. Not every topic in a video game can hit every issue known to man. If that were the case, we should stop making games, almost, because there is no way you can hit every issue in terms of a story. The fact of the matter is you never will. You can't hit every topic. That's the thing. In fact, if you try to do that, you make yourself more problems. You make yourself more problems because you can't give the content and the themes that you're trying to go about the strength and the quality that it's needed in order to discuss those issues. These are not issues that are easy to talk about. The idea of, you are sort of insignificant in the world of, the overall world's landscape is a hard issue to talk about, because if done wrongly, the person sitting there feeling like, oh, damn, I am insignificant. And it's sort of, one of those situations where it just like, it leaves such a bad message at that point that, yeah, you can leave that message, but there's a good way of leaving that message and a bad way of leaving that message. Those kind of issues are why I love video games in terms of the immersiveness of the topic in question. It can bring you in and make you talk about things that are a hard topic to discuss, but interact with you on it. The idea of Spec Ops: The Line and the white phosphorus that happened in the game, that event, the sort of cruelty of war, the discussion that could come out of that is amazing. Just the idea of you taking a little bit different perspective on it and saying, hey, wait a minute, take a step back. Maybe this isn't exactly great that we sort of, bring this up to everyone. That there is no, that, we sort of glorify the military portion when there's always, another side of the story. What bothers me is that in the idea of progressiveness and the idea of being more diverse and more open to people, I feel like the current landscape of the media is actually the opposite, that it's actually taking steps back, where the idea of openness, the idea of, the ability for a writer to write what he wants and to throw topics on the fire that people will need to consider, that if it doesn't have a certain message to it, that it shouldn't be considered. I don't know where this went wrong. I mean, I don't know where we have hit this point where discussing anything within a context has to be a certain type of issue. Games had evolved past that. With games, I mean, it had been a situation where you had like the Final Fantasy games discussing about the government, the issues of government and religion versus, the individuality of a person. We praised those games for some of the things they did with those topics. The idea of games like The Last of Us, the games like, Enslaved, and games like that, hitting core issues to the human persona, and yet we don't lock in on what that writer's trying to focus on. We're always focused on where can we put this X message into it. And we never take a step back and actually ask, wait a minute, maybe my perception of it, this is wrong, and maybe I should open up a discussion about it more than anything else. And that is critically what's bothering me. It's not about having a discussion about these issues. It's always a sort of a matter-of-fact right and wrong situation where you were wrong for interpreting or, writing it like this. Not, well, hold on a second, you may have been wrong, but here's some things that you could have pointed out to the user or the writer in question, maybe to consider for, a different time or different place. No, it's you did this wrong. The idea of the racism discussion in Watcher 3, what they did was wrong. Not the perception of where it was from a Polish standpoint in terms of their heritage, but more so you didn't have the black people represented correctly, and therefore you're wrong. When did we get like this? When did the media get like this? No progressive person, and I say real progressive person, would ever shut down discussion of that. And that's what bothers me the most, that in the idea of progressiveness, in my mind, discussion is the key part of it. The discussion of back and forth, so that discussion allows people to take a look at things and say, oh, I didn't consider that before, and to actually get into the details of things. Instead, it is more so of a listen mentality. Like, we've told you what you need to listen to. We've told you what you need to understand, and we've told you how to think. As a scientist and as a logical thinker, that to me is absurd. And whether it be academia that's changed, whether it be the idea of the media has changed, overall, it's just the situation where we have to get by this if we really do want games to be progressive. And not every game has to have a message in terms of a core, idea. Some games can just be fun. They do serve purposes. Games are so versatile and different from game to game that they can have different purposes. Some can be just a pleasure experience. Some can be a hard-hitting topic to discuss. Some of them can be both. But to say that it has to be something, when did it ever have to be something? I thought that's the point of art. When was art has to be X? It has to be, realistic. It has to be, done with a certain style. To tell me that Picasso's work isn't the right way of doing it, I would tell you, if that's the conclusion that we're going to come to, then we're not going to make it as an art form in the gaming world, because an art form is able to evolve, but it's also able to hit new ways of exploration and in terms of expression. I know this is a long rant, I really do, I had to talk about this, guys. I'm sorry. That article sort of pissed me off on almost every level, but in particular with this game, where I thought it did the story right, to see someone sort of jump the gun and try to make a topic that obviously was completely forced and no thought was put into it, it pisses me off, because this medium is probably one of the strengths of the current media today. It shows with the amount of money it makes. It shows in how much it's grown over the last 20 years. To just take such an infantile look at it and to a singular topic look at it is absurd. Every issue within a game can be talked about. Any issue can be talked about. But just because your issue doesn't exist in the game doesn't mean it has to be in the game. Understand that we can discuss the idea of Batwoman and her portrayal of it, but don't tell me the way I should feel about it. That's what it comes down to. Alright guys, I will see you all later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.